So in these times, I think it's really easy to get lost in the learning trap of AI. And like on one hand, it's extremely convenient, but it's almost too fast. And we're kind of given this illusion that we're becoming an expert at a topic, only really to find out later that it's just surface level. So last year, during my freshman year of university, I actually fell into this trap a lot, right? I would struggle, go to AI, failed to understand something, go to AI. And then one day I realized I couldn't actually explain anything I learned from the AI. So since then, I've changed a lot on how I actually learn. And today I'll be going over 5 different methods of learning, from fast to slow. Now, well, what do I mean by that? Well, the idea is that depending on how we learn, we're either going to choose to acquire information either instantly or at a slow pace. Now, of course, both of these methods have positives and negatives, and you'll kind of get to know these as I talk about the 5 methods. So first off, I'm going to start where I started this video off with, which is AI. Now, this is, of course, the fastest way to gain access to information in our modern day. And while I do think this is super useful, I think it's been honestly abused by most people. So AI should not be your first resource. And when I say this, I think it bothers a lot of people, but let me explain why. LLMs are really good at making you understand the words it's saying, but not the actual idea. So for instance, anyone could go on GPT and ask about something like, let's say, linear algebra, right? And they'll get essentially an understanding. But at the most foundational level, they do not actually understand linear algebra. Another example is I can go on ChatGPT and ask to explain a LeetCode code problem to me, right? And I can feel confident, I can read it over and understand it, but then when I actually go to do the problem, I actually have no clue on how to solve the problem. So fast learning methods like these, I like to call accelerators. They're terrible at laying like the foundational bricks of your learning, but I think they're really good at gluing ideas together and basically filling any gaps of information you don't quite understand. Now, I'm gonna go one level lower and talk about videos. Now, I think media and video consumption can be really good for learning actually, but it could also be kind of a mixed bag, and I'll explain why. So whether it be a course or simply like a tutorial on YouTube, videos move at a linear speed, right? Like you can't tailor the depth of the content or like pause to ask questions or something like that, right? You just gotta simply sit and listen to the video and gain information. Now, of course, this is going to give you deeper exposure than something like AI. And while videos are not entirely efficient, I think they do serve their purpose of kind of getting people the first exposure into the topic they're learning. Definitely at a more complex level that AI will. Now, of course, it's not as fast as AI, but it's still kind of slower where you are building a deeper understanding of the foundations in whatever skill you're learning. And of course, it also kind of depends on what you're consuming, right? If it's a video like a course or a lecture, I think it's a lot different than simply maybe a tutorial or something like that. Now, next, I actually want to talk about books. Now, more specifically, textbooks and like more technical books. And I think these get a really bad reputation just because they're kind of correlated with our school system in the more traditional educational sense. But trust me, I do think they serve a really important role in our learning. Now, unlike videos, books do not move at any specific speed. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you can choose to read the book front to back, or read only a page or two, or read a certain chapter. And while reading is more of a slow type of learning, I think it could be utilized in a fast way depending on how you read the book. So personally, I like to keep some sort of technical book on each of my devices. So it just becomes really easy to just pick up, start reading, and learn something anywhere. So as mentioned before, reading is a slow learning method. So you're gonna actually be getting the depth you need to build complex understandings of concepts. And while at the same time, you actually have control of the pacing yourself, right? Not someone else who perhaps made the video. Now, before getting into what I think and consider as the most in-depth learning method, I kind of want to just go over active recall. And it's spoken about a lot in the productivity space, but I think for a really good reason. And it's because you actually hold true retention of the topic you're learning. So I'm really a fan of summarizing what you learn into notes and essentially just testing yourself over time of what you learned. And a lot of people tend to like Anki too, for revision cards, which I can also approve of. It's pretty good. And again, I have active recall in this place because I do think it is slower than books just because it's more of a long-term kind of learning. And it kind of assumes that you're going to be revising whatever you learned from the methods I mentioned before this. And for that reason, I think it's quite essential for getting knowledge to actually stick, just due to how mentally exhausting this method really is. Now, finally, for the most, I think, in-depth and slowest learning method, I would say simply just putting your skills into action. So of course, for one person, this could be, actually brushing the canvas with paint, or the programmer actually coding up a project. And of course, it's frustrating, it's time intensive, it's pretty difficult, right? But again, this is the most effective way to internalize the ideas. And it's just simply about doing the work you need to do. Now, all the methods I've spoken about in this video, I have implemented in my learning routine, some way or another. So I'm personally going to run you through how I actually start learning a new skill when I pick something up. Now, when I'm first picking up a skill, I need to kind of get a feel for what it is, kind of just the basics, right? And I'll do that by watching maybe a video or two on YouTube. Now that I kind of have some sort of idea of what I'm picking up, what I'm learning about, I'll actually get some sort of reading done. Now, as a programmer, for me, this usually involves reading documentation or perhaps an article or an actual textbook. And also typically during this time, I'll get straight into actually using that skill. So even if it's something unimpressive or quite easy, just putting the skill into action so things actually stick. Now, as I mentioned before, I'll use kind of active recall in the long term to actually get those ideas down and firm into my mind. Now, that is kind of the full process of how I pick up a new skill. But now, of course, where does AI come in, right? Well, to be honest, it isn't really supposed to be utilized at a certain step during the learning process. And I think it's more of just a support during the entire process, right? Um, it's similar to maybe Googling something, right? You're really just filling up those knowledge gaps, and it's not really meant to be used as an entire step during the learning process. Now, the whole point of why I'm kind of making this video is because I think people need to be more aware of how they're actually learning, right? If you're only using fast learning methods like AI or media consumption, you're never actually building those deep, knowledgeable ideas. And of course, this goes the same other way, right? If you're only using slow learning methods, right? If you're only reading books, you'll be at a disadvantage. And in a matter of fact, you'll probably be demotivated, right? To even continue learning that skill. So next time you think about picking up a new skill or just learning in general, you should think about how you're going to utilize slow and fast learning methods to be more knowledgeable and confident in your abilities. Hey, so it's me from the future. I just wanted to go over how I read my books and textbooks on each of my devices, as I mentioned earlier in the video. And here I have my books device. It's an e-ink tablet. And here I have the C programming language book, because I wanted to learn a lower level language. And as you see, I can just go on any chapter, kind of just go through. And this is how I read books, kind of just on the go, or even just here. Pretty nice. And then on my actual computer, I'm using something called Zathra, which is an open source software that actually uses Vim bindings go through the textbook, which is really convenient because I don't ever need to actually touch my mouse, which is really sick. And then when it comes to the phone, I'll just put on a video. I just use Apple Books, the default app, and it works quite nicely. That's where that's how I usually do most of my reading on the go. But yeah, that's about all I wanted to say. So yeah, thanks for watching the video.